Hello, it's the Smol Fury from Thoron Creations, and I'm here to show you some of my tricks that I use whilst casting with silicone. You can see here I've decanted some silicone from the larger tubs into some large tumblers here, and that helps from getting sticky every time you want to get some silicone out, and not biting the tubs every time, of course. Here I have my good stripy stick. As you can see, there's a lolly stick with stripes on it. The stick's quite handy as it helps me make the cup's stripes the similar height from the bottom. I line up the cup with the bottom stripe and then mark on how deep I want the silicone to be by putting it on both cups. Obviously, it helps each cup have the same pour of silicone each time. It's a little easier than using a tape measure because it's your tape measure getting sticky and wrestling with the rest of the tape measure. It's much easier with two hands too. And if indeed the stick does get a bit messy, you can put it in the trash. There we go, two stripy cups. In some cases it's good to mark your cups A and B, but in this case both liquids are quite different in appearance, so it doesn't matter a great deal. I have a nice clean stick that isn't my stripe stick, and I'm going to pour straight in. I'm going to try and avoid touching the edges of the cup I am pouring into to try and keep it nice and tidy. By keeping the rim tidy, it means my fingers will get less sticky, and it will be much easier to stir without getting all over the back of your fingers. For this cup, you can see I'm scraping on the cup I've dispensed from rather than the cup I poured it into. And this helps again keep it off the rim of the cup. And I've tried to keep half the cup here clean, so when you put the handle of the stick down, it means it won't get sticky and you can reuse it again. And again, it's not so great to get uncured silicone on your gloves because it gets everywhere and it's quite difficult to clean up, even if you're tossing the gloves away, but it means you're going to be touching other things with your hands too whilst you're stirring it. It's just easy to keep clean, you know. I find part B of this silicone much faster to pour. Oh, as if I haven't mentioned, this silicone is Rebound 25 by Smol, and it's my preferred silicone to use for brush-on molds. The mold I'm working on at the moment is a Raptor, which is a resin cast, slush cast mold. Oh, I've picked up some sediment that I found in the silicone and rubbed it off there. I always advise having some kitchen roll or paper towels handy when you're doing stuff like this, as you never know when you're going to need them. I like to wipe my hands every now and then to make sure I'm not spreading uncured silicone around the place. And again, scraping on the cup you poured from, rather than the cup you poured into. And again, I left the side of the cup clean to put the handle down. I've got both poured out. Equal amounts. This stuff we'll be using in a sec, which is silicone thickener called Thi-Vex, which is by Smol again, the same company as the silicone itself. I try not to mix brands when it comes to using chemicals, because the brands that have made them will also they know how they're going to react with each other. Although it doesn't mean you can't. What I just showed there was something called Slick Pig, which is a silicone pigment which I'm using to help differentiate? I don't know. It helps you see the layers when you're laying up the silicone on the actual sculpt, so that other areas don't become thicker than they need to be. That's Slick Pig is part of a variety pack of colours, but when you buy them individually they'll come in little dropper bottles, so you don't need to use a stick like I did. I like to use plastic sticks for dipping into those little tub things, because it means you can actually clean those and use those again. But you can use wood, of course. And again, wood stirrers are what I choose to use for this. Some silicones do not get along with wood and require plastic stirrers, but Smol 25, Rebound 25 doesn't seem to mind too much. So here you can see I am stirring in the pigment, trying to make it streak free as possible. before adding it to the part A. I like to keep part A in the tumbler below rather than adding A to B, because the part A is slightly more viscous than part B, and I find it easier. I notice other makers like to have a mixing cup separately, but I find it's much faster just to pour into the decanted cups. Although there is no rush with this one because the pot life is 20 minutes, so it's quite stress-free, unless you spill it, of course. And again, as you can see, I'm trying to keep the tops of the cup I am pouring into quite clean, so that it doesn't get all over the back of my fingers when I'm trying to stir it. And any scraping I'm doing will be on the cup that I'm pouring out of. Don't worry too much about remnants in the cup you're pouring out, because we'll be reusing that again for the next one. Because part B has not been contaminated with part A. Again, because I'm scraping on the cup above, means the stick is not coming into contact with the part A silicone in the cup. But yeah, I think I'm gonna stir it with that stick as well. Yeah, I am. So that stick can't be used again in the part B, obviously. But yeah, you see my scraping method. I'm pushing down on the sides, scraping towards the center and to the back of the cup. I'm also turning the cup as I go, scraping the bottom. I recommend using flat bottom cups for this, but again, it's difficult to get hold of plastic cups which have flat sides and a flat bottom, because how they're made to try and stay rigid. But there is ways of coping. I cope, and it's been fine since. I haven't had any uncured silicone. Just don't scrape right at the bottom when you're decanting it onto the sculpt. I usually leave a little bit in the bottom so that I don't risk unmixed silicone getting onto the sculpt, though I've yet to have a problem with that. You'll see I'm reaching right into the bottom to make sure I get all of that white part A mixed into the orange. Oh gosh, look at my pinky. That's terrible. I didn't even know I did that. Trying to get it all streak free, scraping bottoms and sides. Also recommend going around sideways with the stick, scraping off, there we go, all the sides, making into the bottom. Once that is streak free, then you can add the Thi-Vex thickener. They recommend about 3 drops per cup, and I recommend not filling your cups much higher than I did in this video, which makes stirring the silicone much easier. When you have fuller cups of silicone, it can be quite tough to stir, and your mixing sticks might end up snapping. A thing to note with the Thi-Vex also is when you stir, the pot gets a little bit static, so the drips might end up just streaming to the side of the cup, rather than you being able to count the drips. But with experience, you will learn what amount of squirt you'll need in that cup, rather than counting how many drips go in. Yeah, mixing again this thoroughly, and you'll be able to see the state change on how thick the silicone gets compared to what it was earlier. The higher side of using silicone thickener means your silicone won't be dripping everywhere when you put it on the mold. So rather than pouring down the side in a lower viscous state, it will stay where you put it, which is a bit like royal cake icing if you've ever used that on a cake. It's quite handy stuff, highly recommend it. But yeah, here we go on the Raptor sculpt. I've already done a few layers and already done some Thi-Vex layers. As you can see, I'm mostly focusing on the under edge of the undercut here. I highly recommend having an undercut on the edge of your resin molds, as when you're slush casting, it will reduce the risk of overflowing and spilling, and it will help give your cast a nice edge rather than a rigged edge, which will always need to be trimmed. With this method, you may not even need to trim, you might just need to sand the edge a little bit. I also recommend smoothing out eye holes, and on this Raptor, the eye hole and nose hole, to try and make it as smooth as possible, so when the mother mold goes on, you won't need to put so much strength to pull it off. once you've cast something into it. And the less bending of the mother mold, the better. I will do another video talking about the mother molds and silicone bumps, which name escapes me, which hold the silicone into the mother mold and stop your mold going floppy whilst you're trying to cast. Yeah, I think you'll need about 4 layers of silicone with thickener. It speeds up the entire process as well, as you need less layers. But always remember, oh, there we're done. Right, next video.